Hello everybody, thank you for tuning in and watching some of the bits and pieces that I do on my phone of me making some of the nice pieces of silver and gold. What I'm making today is a two-handled christening cup. They're also known as a Guernsey loving cup. They go back a long way to the early 1600s, 1682 to be precise, that the Guernsey silversmiths were making them. But going back, I've always known that there was a link between Paul Revere, or like they were, Apollo Revere, the name was then, because they came from France, so they'd have been predominantly speaking French language. But he travelled to Guernsey in 1715 from a place called St. Foy in France to live with his uncle, a Dr. Simon Revere. He was a doctor and a silversmith, and he purchased land in Guernsey, and he was the father of Paul Revere, the silversmith and patriot who made the famous midnight ride from Charlestown to Lexington to warn the revolting colonists of the impending arrival of the British troops on the night of 18th of April 1775, and is known as the first battle for American independence. But these little cups, they're quite something else. We call them a traditional Guernsey loving cup. They're all handmade, and these have got our Guernsey hallmarks underneath. But there's a lot of work to produce them, and we've produced them for 5 generations in my family, and still very, very popular today. But going back to Paul and the bit of history, Paul, basically what happened is that the family, after he lived with them for a while in Guernsey, the family paid the money to an estate in Boston to a silversmith called John Cooney. But the problem is John died shortly after, leaving Paul with 3 years of his apprenticeship still to serve. Age 20, he changed his name from Apollo Revere to Paul Revere. Simon, his uncle, paid John Cooney's estate £40 for his release after the death of his master. This enabled him to return to Guernsey, where he stayed for a further 2 years. But what was the purpose of him coming back to Guernsey? I mean, it was a heck of a long way on the tall ships. Probably been 3 months or longer. Basically, was it gratitude to his uncle and the family for providing the funds to release him from his bond, or was it to finish his craft working with Guernsey silversmiths? Only Paul's work could not have been achieved with only 3 years apprenticeship under John Cooney in Boston. During Paul's 2-year stay in Guernsey, he would have needed an income, but the family's connection with Marie, a cousin of Paul Revere, through the marriage to the famous Guernsey silversmith Pierre Mangy, would have given Paul time to finish his craft working with Pierre and other local silversmiths, and during that time it would have enabled him to make many pieces, including the traditional Guernsey Silver Christening Cups that have been made since 1682, and they're still made today by my family. Paul returned to Boston in 1725 and opened his own silversmith shop, and he taught the craft to his son Paul II, that is, the patriot. Paul went on to craft many fine pieces of silver, including traditional Guernsey christening cups. Several examples are on display at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. Paul also went on to make the famous Sons of Liberty bowl that has been, I think it might still be on display at the White House. Below are shown Bruce's and Paul's christening cups. Depending on the individual maker, they were crafted either plain silver or embellished around the base. This is an early one of Paul's with his Revere mark on it, and this is one of mine, how I was taught to make them by my father and him from his father. And incidentally, I've taught my son Simon how to make them as well. But I love the obituary that goes with it. It says, when Paul died, seldom has a tomb closed upon a life so honourable and useful. I researched this with a lot of other people, way back now. This one at the bottom here has got 1992, but I was researching this back in the 60s and 70s. Then I got some people who knew what the heck they were talking about a bit more than me to go in depth to it. But if anybody can find any more information that I could bring it up to date, it would be great, because we believe this is around about 95% right, but when you speak to all different people, everybody's got a slightly different view. So it'd be nice to know if I could update it. It'd be most appreciated. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to make one of these, and I thank you for all the likes. Very important to me, because when you like something that you see on Facebook, and in particular my work, it's most appreciated because I can see where in the world you're coming from. Anyway, let's get started. Now the circle's cut out and I've marked the base here. This is for when I start raising, I can centralize it so the cup comes up even. So this is the side that I need to block. I'm going to use a blocking hammer like this, starting off on the tree trunk. You can see from the side it's starting to curl. I'll go around till I've got a little ball, I'll anneal it to soften it, and then I'll start to raise it on one of the raising stakes. Now the blocking is nearly there. You can see I've got a little shallow bowl. The silver's getting very, very hard, so I'm going to anneal it by getting it red hot, plunging it into the cold water to soften it, and then I'll be able to start to raise it. Now I've got the Argo Tecton. This is like a paste that protects from fire stain. You can buy this from any reputable bullion dealer. But I've coated it, mixed it up into a paste. Use it, methylated spirits is the best rather than water. So I'm going to get it red hot and then plunge it into the cold water. This is the raising stake that I want to use, and this will rest on there, and where that circle is, that's where I'll start to raise the whole item up. Now it's been annealed, it's gone quite a lot softer, but I'll need to use a raising hammer. That's a little hammer like this here, and it's a matter of using the point here not to thin it but to draw it down slowly, just changing the shape of the bowl to raise it up, but I don't want to thin it. One of the things I had to do when I was learning from my father is I had to cut one of these in half and make sure the bowl was the same thickness all the way down. It's quite an art to do that, but it'll turn out perfect in the end. Now I'm going to start to take this down over here, following my circle. You can probably just see the line coming in there. Carry on with a bit of that. That's the first sort of step in it as such. I'll go right up here to the little line, and then I'll go all the way down, and the whole item will then start to come up. Right, I've been around it once with the raising hammer. If I turn it this way, you'll see how much it's come up. Yeah. So I'm just going to anneal it now, and then I'll get it up a little bit more. Yeah. Have to anneal it because of the structure of the silver will change, and it will eventually crack if I keep doing that. So back to anneal it. You can see the shape's coming up really well now, but it's going to be annealed to get it right. Just to get a bit of tension out of it, then I'll carry on raising. Well, it's halfway here now. It's coming together quite good. A little bit more work, come all the way down, and then I'll anneal it and then do it again. Probably 3 more turns being annealed and that, and it should be ready of the correct shape. Well, the shape's coming together very good now. It's about 60% there. Just need to anneal it to soften it, and I'll carry on raising. So that's that done, but get a bit of flame here. Just let it burn off a little bit, and then I'll plunge it into the cold water, and that will soften it. When I look back, these have been made since 1682, and the process, how we raise them, and the way the Guernsey silversmiths used to do them, nothing has changed in all that time. Still made exactly the same way, which is a lot of work. I've got to anneal it, probably it's 1 mil thick, and I've got to anneal the silver probably 4 or 5 times before it's finished. This is the most labour intense part. After that, all I'll do is start on the foot, the traditional base that goes on. Well, now the basic shape's there. All I'm going to do is anneal it for the last time. I'll put the Argotect on it, so I'll anneal it now, and then I could just get the correct shape and then start to plenish it smooth. Well, that's the roundness of the base coming together well. So I just need to get that a little bit more accurate, carry on down here, and then get the correct shape in then. But I'm nearly there. Now all the raising's finished, I'm going to start to remove the little marks that's there, and I start that by plenishing it all over using a stake like this here and a satin finish hammer, so I can see where I've been to get it completely accurate. So all the raising's finished now. Now I've raised it up all the correct shape now, I'm just plenishing it all over just to remove all the little slight imperfections, and then I'll just rub it down with a buff stick like this. It's a very fine emery stick. You just go over like that, and then you remove any of the surface slightly irregularities. So I'll carry on. I'm working on here at the moment. So I'll do that all the way down, and then I'll just have to flare the top edge out, and then it's ready. Just hallmark it, make the little rim base up, and then I'll cast the handles and then polish it, and that's another one done. Well, now all the raising's finished. All I need to do now, I've plenished it to get most of the fine little marks out. So I'm just going to finish off around the inside to get that correct. Then I've got to flare the top out here, so that's a pretty straightforward job, and then the cup will be basically correct for me to start just sanding down and getting the handles on. Now I've got the little piece cut out for the foot here. I want to just knock it over on a little stake like this, and then I'll silver solder it together. Now I've soldered up the joint there, I'm going to round it up, just remove any excess solder that's on both sides, and then I'm ready to go back onto the mandrel and start to get the U shape in it. So that's looking good. Now this has all been finished here, what I've got to do is finish the base. I'll turn the little silver piece around, and this will make up the base like that there. So I need this dish little area where it goes in, so I'm going to use a hammer like this. And then this was eventually, years and years ago, an old baseball bat, and we've used it for different items where we cut, because it's really hard wood. So I'm going to use a hammer like this and start to dish it down. Now you can see that it's starting to go in already. So I'll carry on going all the way around. Then I'll take it off and flatten it down to get it to curve in correctly. To get it more accurate, and you could see it's more pronounced now going from the wood, I'll just use a hammer like this just to go around and flatten that down, and then I'll round it all up on a small steel mandrel. Right, well now the little foot is made. Just gonna put a file across that, get it completely level, and then that is the piece there. So just get the top of this level, get this part here level, and I can solder the two of them together, and that'll be the base on. Just starting to solder, put a little bit of solder and it'll run around. It'll carry on all the way around, then heat the whole thing up and it'll just drop on completely level. Now you watched me make the little foot and put that on. My next thing will be to hallmark it. Now there's a flat area here, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to stamp our four Guernsey hallmarks underneath. We're very lucky with our hallmarks, because if I was working in the UK, that's England, I would have to send my work to the London Essay Office. I do have a mark that's registered there, but because we have our own unique local mark and the islands are independent, we can stamp all our work with our own marks. And it's made them quite sort of very popular, because the marks are different to anything else that you see. But we still, like all silversmiths, have a maker's mark. This is what it is. It's a piece of hardened steel, and it's carved in reverse with my initials inside the outline of Guernsey. So that's what they call a maker's mark. The second mark will be the seal of the royal seal of King Edward I that was given to the islands in the early 1200s. And the third mark will be a date stamp, which is a date letter for the year of manufacture, then 0.925 silver to show it's sterling silver. So once that's hallmarked, the next thing will be to, I've cast these already. This is quite a long process, and we usually make about 6 or 7 at a time. These are the little handles that will go on the side here, but they've got to have the sprues cut off. That's these pieces here. And then they're ready then to be soldered on. There's an interesting fact here. Since these little cops have been made in Guernsey since the 1600s, the silversmiths then, what they would have done is they would have gone down to the beach and got some cuttlefish. Now the cuttlefish, they would cut it in half, and then they would make one of these handles by hand, and they would press half into one side of the cuttlefish and half into the other, and then that would give them the pattern to basically make a one-off piece. But the problem is now everything is done. You can get a better quality with a lost wax casting. That's straight out of the cast. There's nothing being done to it at all. So you can see it's got a lot of fine detail to it. It's brilliant if you're making a lot of handles or charms or anything. So I'm going to cut the sprues off here. I will fit them to the cup, but I will polish it firstly just to remove any little fine marks and that on it, and then I'll solder those on. Now I'm going to put the handles on. I've got one here ready to go. So I'll just let the Argotech burn off, and then I'll rest that on there and drop a little piece of solder on. That's one on, and I'll do the same on the other side. Now both the handles are soldered on. I can put it in some hot water, and that will just remove the flux and get the silver to come back to the correct colour. I'll just use a small knob like that just to get inside to remove any marks. As you can see, the christening cup's all finished now, all suitably hallmarked. So I started just going on the inside with a very fine mop using some rouge, and now I've got a soft mop in here. I'm just going to start to polish the outside. That's done just like this. see that starting to come, so I'll go all over it like that, and then it's ready to be suitably engraved. Right, the little christening cups you see me making, the one on the far right is for my grandson Oliver. I'm a few years behind making it, it's been a busy period, but the one in the middle is for William, my grandson, and Simon, my son, who makes christening cups like this as well. He's on the far left. So it's nice to see. So you know, we've got myself, Simon and his children. We've got 3 generations here, so it's really nice. So just hold them up and give them a turn, lads. That's absolutely perfect, and they're all suitably engraved, so yeah, they all look rather nice. Right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
As well as the little silver christening cups you've seen for my 2 grandsons, for my granddaughters in 2012, they had the last 2 of these pendants. These were made for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee in 2012. They're set with 60 brilliant cut diamonds. That's 1 for each year of Her Majesty's Jubilee, and they're in the form of the crown with the royal cipher on the top. They're made in 18 karat white and yellow gold, and they're set with 60 diamonds. They're quite an unusual, nice piece. Anyway, that's it from Bruce in Guernsey. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you get a chance, give me a like, it's most appreciated. Stay well, everybody. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.